What up, infidels? Welcome to the Dangerous Brown Podcast, a special Monday episode. Didn't want to give you one on Christmas, so I'm giving you one today. For those of you who don't know, 5 years ago, I was a young comic who just got hired at the Comedy Store, and I did a bunch of interviews with other comedians about a comic named Freddy Soto, who I had heard about died many years before, and I was just interested in his life and who he was. So for this interview, I talked to paid regular Cynthia Levine. She dated Freddy a couple times. She has a lot of interesting things to say about life on this one. Tune in, listen in. It's a good one. If you haven't seen the first one in the series or haven't listened to the first interview, check out the Eleanor Kerrigan episode. If you're on audio, I released it about a month ago, so you can go back and listen to that. If you're on my YouTube, I have a channel dedicated, or a playlist, dedicated to the Freddy Soto interviews, so just go ahead and look at my playlist. But yeah, let's get right into it, guys. Enjoy Cynthia Levine.
Thank you for doing this with me, Cynthia.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So, what happened yesterday?
Well, last night I showed up late, but I had to because I was teaching acting, not to brag. And but I was and I popped over to El Compadre, a place that Freddy used to love going to. And so Corey put it together with a bunch of people. I guess they do it every year. But I was really happy because she messaged me on Facebook and told me about it. And I got to go over there and saw Freddy's sister's kids, who I hadn't, one of them I hadn't seen since he was little. And then the other one I never saw before. Amazing. Anyway, a bunch of people were there. Cruz was there. Hadn't seen her in years. And
Freddy's daughter.
Freddy's daughter. And I hugged her. See, I get all emotional.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm all emotional. Anyway, so I gave her a hug. I got there and I said, no, harder, hug me harder. I just couldn't get enough of her. And then when I left, she came over to hug me goodbye, and she gave me this a big squeeze, and it was I felt Freddy's heart. And that's the truth. And I called Eleanor after we kind of separated, and I said, I just told her what happened, that it was so important to see everybody and to go there last night. It's so funny because you don't know, you just kind of go somewhere. Oh yeah, that'd be great. But you don't know what, there's a feeling that is so powerful. I'm all emotional. Anyway, it was kind of amazing. You know what I mean? And I think you don't realize what you miss. And, kind of amazing.
How did you meet Freddy?
God. Well, at an open mic, in, oh God, what year was it? I'd probably been doing, I've been doing it about 5 years, and he'd probably been doing it maybe 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 1994. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something in there. Does that make sense? Do you know how long he's been doing it?
I have a vague idea.
Okay. Yeah.
94. That's about the time. Was he working at the store yet?
Not yet.
No.
I was a regular at the store. He was not. And then we were about breaking up at that point when he actually got a job as the door guy.
Okay.
Which became complicated. But anyway. But yeah, we actually, we dated 2 times. I broke up with him the first time, and then we got back together again 2 years later. He called me and said he was doing La Jolla, and do I want to go with him? And I'd been missing him for 2 years.
Right.
And I was like, yes, right, I'll leave right now. And so we went down to La Jolla, and we started dating again, and then we broke up after about 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go into all that, but he was living at the Comedy Store at Mitzi's house upstairs, above he was living up there and with Wheels and, Wheels.
I don't actually.
You don't know Wheels?
Yeah.
He sometimes opens for Andrew Dice Clay, and he's been around for ages. And so, he was living there with Wheels at the time. And so it was like the comics, whatever, where they lived. Some, it was different. Every year it would be a different group of comedians, I guess. But anyway, that was when he was there. But we were engaged the first time we were dating. We had exchanged 99-cent rings over in Huntington Beach. And that was it was very romantic.
So how did you meet me?
We met at an open mic. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting off track, aren't I? You asked me one question, and I told you about my diapers. We met at an open mic at a coffee house, and I actually have a picture of him somewhere. I wish I gotta find it though. But of him sitting in a chair with his his hand like resting on his fingers, sort of like that thinking pose he does leaning on an armchair. And was very much a Freddy pose. And I kind of fell in love with that guy because he was a deep thinker and very, he had a big heart, but he was also a very deep person, just like you know how old soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And deep soul's not the word, old soul. Yeah. So, yeah. And we just I saw him there, and I think it was, I can't remember, but we ended up, I think, again, I saw him at Pedersen's Coffee House, which was a big, a great room for open mic. It was packed every Tuesday night.
Really?
Packed. I mean, it was a massive room, like the best of the best of the best. There's never been a better open mic before or after, ever. And I feel sorry for myself and everybody else who hasn't experienced it, but that it's over. But yeah, it would be like, like 150 people in there sometimes. And it was consistent, though. And it was never lame. And you would go without fail. And all the comics, we would all go there. And it was just like 5 minutes. Vance Sanders is the guy who ran it. He still does an open mic out in Pasadena at the moment. But anyway, it was amazing. And so I think that's where that's where we connected, and just started dating after that. It didn't take long for me. You know what I mean? It's like 2 seconds. Somebody just says hello, and I'm like, okay, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean? And then we're in love, and we move in together, and that kind of thing. It's really no big deal. No, I'm just kidding.
That's very LA.
Yeah, very LA. Yeah, very comedian.
Right.
Very pathetic. But anyway, but yeah. So it was obviously it was a special relationship. I've never been engaged to anybody before except for Freddy. So to this day, I'm like 107. So you know what I mean? I guess it meant something.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what was his what was his journey to becoming a door guy here?
Well, how did it all begin? I think it was something he'd been wanting to work at the store, for a while. And I guess that was one thing that I had that I didn't realize, was such a big deal. But that obviously people want, and he literally, the day I left the second time that we broke up, he had just got the job at the store. And he came, I think he was came home in his T-shirt, do you know what I mean? It was like that.
Right.
He had his Comedy Store T-shirt on, I remember him telling me, he's a door guy now, and it was a big deal. And then he ended up driving Mitzi around everywhere, and then and Paulie, and he became very much that person for them for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was his comedy like around that time?
Amazing.
Already.
Mm-hmm. Freddy was always amazing. I think the thing about Freddy that sort of separated him, though, especially in the open mic scene, was that he was, as I say, he was deep. So he had, I think he was depressed, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but so were everybody, we all were,
Yeah.
but he didn't hide it. And so his depression was also a part of his persona. It was sort of like he had a heaviness to him. But then but then the other opposite was his lightness, because he would like to overcome his darkness or his depression. And he would be like the most amiable person you'd ever meet. And everybody loved him. I mean, I don't know anybody who, you know what I mean? Like in terms of in those days, obviously people start to hate you when you start to do well.
Right.
But at the time he was non-threatening and just a funny, nice person who was deep and thoughtful, and and so when he would go up on stage, sometimes his material could get you into a heavy space, but never to a point where you were not intrigued or gripped by him. And he always did find a way to lighten it up at some point,
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make any sense? Is that telling you something? Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess stylistically, was he different? Was that different than what everyone was doing at the time, or?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of uniqueness popping around during that time, actually. There were not a lot of people copying each other, I think. Especially, I think that coffee house scene and I think people had all these unique voices, which was so great, because there wasn't the pressure to be, to be a certain way to make sure you got paid. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, his unique style was contemplative. It was slower. He wasn't trying to sell himself. He was just talking. Then he started to do bits about his dad. That was very much making fun of his dad. And then he would do a little bit about his mom, and impersonate her. What else did he talk about? I mean, really, it was mostly family stuff. And his dad had was a very powerful person in his life. Had a made a big impression on him. I'm sorry, I can't think. I didn't sleep last night. Thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. But anyway, I'm fine. So, yeah. So, but that's what it was about. And I think then he started to tighten it. And when he started to be able to, because you start working at the door, he started to be able to get spots,
Right.
work in spots and stuff like that, or whatever it was, Sunday, Monday, and whatever. And he just really, he moved up faster than anybody I knew at the time. Like he moved up fast. He worked really hard. He was very focused. And sometimes I think that people who know they're not going to be around for a while, they have, they just take the cap off and they just go after it. And it's sort of like an unconscious knowledge. I don't know, maybe. But I always feel like people who pass early have achieved a lot already. Me, I'll probably die at like 2000. You know what I mean? Just because, obviously, incremental life. But
Did you? This is an interesting question. Then, did you ever get the vibe that he thought he was gonna die early from him? Was there ever like a point where you were with him where you're like, oh wow, this he might not last long?
One time. And it was right before. And I was at the Comedy Store here, and I was in the kitchen, and I had been living in New York, I think, and I came back, and I was in New York from 2000 to 2005. And I came back, and I hadn't seen him for a bit. I saw him in New York. I went to his special, his Comedy Central special, when I was living there. I went to see that, which was great.
I was telling Eleanor that's the reason why I got interested in him, is I saw it as a kid. His Comedy Central Presents is one of the better ones.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Fantastic. So that was like a big night for all of us. It was a big deal, and we went out afterwards. Like we hung out for a little bit with some of the chicks that were working at the club, at the Gotham Comedy Club, a couple of those gals, and that was pretty much it. And that was it. And I didn't see him again. I think he left at some point. Like in the middle of the, like bam, gone. I don't know. But when at the Comedy Store, so I'm in the kitchen, and actually Johnny Sanchez was in there, I think too. And Freddy and him, and both Freddy and him had been working at the Laugh Factory a bit during that time. And he came into the kitchen, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and he said, I think he said something like, "You're always my favorite," something like that. And it really kind of moved me, I think, because my thing was that I don't even think I had this, insecurity, unconscious awareness, like I was unaware of the fact that I didn't think people even noticed me. Like that's
right.
Because confidence, comedians, we're all so healthy. But yeah, so I think it really moved me, and it because he's basically saying to me, you mattered, you mattered to me, and it was, you're important. And there was a moment there that it was almost like he was kind of taking care of business, in a sense.
Really?
By sharing this with me in that moment. He was in a weird space. He was like, again, Freddy, because he had such deep depression, I think he always tried to like, hey, be cheery and all that kind of stuff. And it's extra effort, obviously, to be over the top like that, so as to not be in that space. He had to work extra hard and be jovial. And, and that was his energy around people when he was being social. And so anyway, but it was an interesting moment in the kitchen. And then not a week later, no, not even, no, that's not it. It was the same night.
It was the same night?
It was the same night.
It was the same night?
It was the same night. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Where were you when you found out?
I went to the Comedy Store the next night. So that was a Saturday night at the Comedy Store in the kitchen. And then the next night I was coming back for Sunday, and I walked in the door of the building, and Lee, one of the waitresses here, who's a good friend of mine, I used to live with her and all the other gals, and she said, Freddy died. And I just lost it, obviously. I think that's the timeline anyway. I'm pretty positive. I'm pretty sure, if it makes sense. I don't know if you know of the days and stuff like that, but that I think that was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and yeah, I basically lost my mind, and the funeral was a nightmare, and just a nightmare. So, and we weren't even obviously together at the time. He was with Corey, and then Cruz, and Cruz was, I think, 3 or something. Mm-hmm.
Did Freddy, when he was with you, did he have problems with drugs and
Never.
never?
So that's the thing. He was totally sober when I was with him the entire time. Totally freaking sober. And, I might have had a beer maybe once in a while, but I wasn't really drinking, and I'm not an alcoholic. And at the time, it was like all that mattered was like clarity, so I can, you know, be successful, because I had my own shit to deal with,
Right.
And so, yeah, so he was never, so I never saw him buzzed, never. And all that time. And so when I found out later that he was using, and when I saw him at the Comedy Central thing and he was drinking afterwards, I was sort of like kind of blown away. He looked different. He was acting different. It wasn't the same person. And I knew this was somebody who was trying to rise above deep depression, trying to deal, just trying to deal, not really grounded, not happy at all. It was all false.
What do you think made him so depressed, or why do you think he wasn't grounded?
Well, he had, like I say, I think, from his childhood, whatever that was for him, and it's not for me to say, but he had, I think he felt a lot of pressure, though, just to put it simply, from his dad to be successful. I think he wanted to prove to him. He had a lot to prove. So he kind of walked around with a bit of a puffed up chest from time to time, and he was determined to prove himself, and at all costs, period. But before I knew Freddy, he had shown me pictures of himself prior to us getting together in whatever it was, 1994 or 96, can't remember. He he was huge, and he looked like a Hawaiian, because he would wear these giant Hawaiian shirts, and like that's just how he dressed, because that's probably all he can fit in. He was a big guy, and he looked nothing. And he was using at the time in those photos. He had his parents had put him into a rehab like when he was 16 or something, and that was it. So a rehab, 16, and then he just kind of dried out on his own after that. He didn't go to AA or anything like that. So it was all sort of self-done. But I think he needed to take care of himself more than that, more than just stop, because obviously you're still an alcoholic, you're just not using. So you still have the same feelings, the same difficulties, you're just not compounding them with the drug. So, you know what I'm saying, yeah? So, so I forgot what your question was originally, because I just keep going on and on.
Oh, it was just about why you think he didn't feel grounded.
Yeah, I think, when I saw him, I think obviously it was, so what happens, I think, with people is that they feel like they can never do enough. And so they're not loving themselves, right? And because they got information a long time ago that there's something wrong with them. So a long time ago, he got that information, didn't know he got that information, and then fought it his whole life. And I think his, I'm getting off track again. But what you're saying is like, why do I? Yeah. So I think that made him feel like because as I say, he never felt like he was good enough. And I know a lot of us can relate to that, but that you can never do right. You can never do it well enough. You can never be big enough. And I feel like he could, and I think he was always disappointed in his father's response to whatever success he did have. His dad would make fun of it or make little of it, or, using humor. His dad was a very funny man.
Right.
And Freddie loved him, absolutely. But I think there was obviously, they had, it was tough, and pressure. And he put pressure, and then he continued to pressure himself. Like he didn't get help, to deal with it necessarily. I think he said he went to church one time and, and and did confession, and he thought he was good to go after that. literally one time.
So he wasn't a very religious guy.
He wasn't religious, and he wasn't necessarily into self. Like he's willing to talk about stuff, right? He's not a problem talking about feelings or things like that, but he wasn't necessarily willing to really take care of himself, really do the work to like start to self-love, which is what we have to do because our parents are gone now. Well, now what are you going to do?
Right.
You know what I mean?
So he could talk about what was wrong with him, but never really did anything to
He didn't even
remedy it.
yeah, I mean, he didn't even necessarily. He would make fun of it. He wouldn't necessarily, or he just would just deal, like meaning like he wasn't terribly active. You know, he would like he could lay in bed. You know, he could really, and he would just lay in bed and like this is how he would prepare for a set. He didn't really write stuff down. He would just lay in bed and and he would visualize his set. And I do that to this day, and it's like the best preparation ever. But like that's what he used to do. So I would be like, oh my God, how can you just lay there and this guy doesn't work hard enough and yet he's doing so great, and you know what I mean? And you know how we are like so competitive, it's ridiculous, you know.
Right.
So but that's literally how he would prepare, and then he would go up and do it, and he was a consummate performer. He would make sure that he put on a show, particularly here. Now you're at the Comedy Store and there's more pressure, you know, and so meaning a club, you know, and he would always pull it out, like, so once in a while he'd try to do some more alternative material and stuff like that, and he would get away with it, you know.
Right.
But for the most part, people really wanted him to be big and wanted him to do his dad material and, you know, and all that stuff. And
did you ever meet his dad?
Oh yeah. I went to Mexico to El Paso with him. We ate Mexican food, and we went to El Paso with him. I think just one time when we were in, quasi engaged, as they say, meaning we exchanged 99-cent rings, but we were planning to get married. And,
right.
We were going to possibly do it there, and we were just talking to his parents about it. I don't know, but we went over there, and and I thought, oh my God, this place is horrifying to look at. It was so flat, it scared me. I mean, I'm from Chicago, like there's a very busy city,
right?
And then I'm there, and I'm like, it was really funny, but the food was really good. His grandmother made the best food I've ever had in my life.
Yeah,
in my life, not exaggerating. She made some kind of like meat, like that you put into tacos or carne asada.
Right.
But it was the most amazing thing I've ever had in my life. To this day, blew my mind. And I thought, oh, no wonder why, he loves her so much.
What was the difference between like LA Freddy and El Paso Freddy?
Oh, I think it was harder for him in El Paso. I think he had to, he'd be try to be real bright and real cheery and all that kind of stuff. But I think his dad was drinking at the time a lot, and Freddy wasn't. And, and it was just like we'd get in his dad's car and he's in charge, and he'd be drinking and be like driving somewhere. And I just remember him like not really talking to me. He was talking in Spanish. He would talk in Spanish instead of like connecting with me.
Right.
Like he just didn't want to deal, and he did everything his way. And I think Freddy, obviously there's conflict with that, if you're with somebody, any one of us, or with anybody who's controlling and sort of like takes ownership, like kind of like runs the room, runs the car, runs the house, and we're sort of then become the, just the, what, I don't even know what the word is, but you end up being just sort of like the smaller person. You're just sort of, you have to succumb to whatever their energies and whatever their desires are,
Right.
Yeah. So.
And yeah, that's interesting. So it's like, could you see the sort of
dynamic?
Yeah, the dynamic, and kind of, I guess, the reason why Freddy became a stand-up in that sort of, or like.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, his dad is hilarious. I mean, he was cracking me up. He was a total asshole, and he was cracking me up, His mother was as sweet as could be, and she did talk like this, like, and Freddy always imitated her talking like that, and she did talk like that. And very sweet, very soft, the total opposite of the father. I mean, the dynamic was hysterical. I mean, between the two of them. And then, but I think Freddy, there's only two kids, right? And he's being the man of the house. Freddy was like fighting to be respected, fighting to be, believed in. Mm-hmm. And I think his dad, because of his own probably, who knows, his own issues of things that he wished he could have done, because he probably could do a lot of things. He might have kind of just kept Freddie. I mean, that's how we all operate. I mean, he's not singling him out as being the worst man on the planet by any stretch. He's just sort of
Right.
like the son of somebody who has a lot of energy and is very powerful and could cut you down to a piece of, to a sliver of a human being, with humor, but still,
Right.
and of course the other side of that is rage. So I think Freddie also got his rage too. You know what I mean?
Really? So was Freddy like an angry guy?
No, I'm saying he probably received his dad's rage.
Oh, he was
and
on the receiving end.
Yeah, and so Freddie, in opposite, that's sort of how we operate, is kind of go from how we, whatever trait we've sort of been brought up with, that we didn't like,
Right.
because it affected us in a negative way. We all kind of go to the opposite. So Freddie went to his mom's like opposite of being sweet and gentle and kind of more laid back and relaxed and not wanting to be a fighter, not wanting to argue, not wanting to be, use his power. And so I think that's why I was drawn to him, though. I was drawn to Freddie's heart, to be honest. He had a really great heart, a really big heart, and he was vulnerable. He was not a typical male. He actually he was willing to be vulnerable with people and just like, as I say, if he had feelings, he'd be in feeling, and he didn't try to, but again, this is me. I knew him like more intimately, just the two of us hanging out. And then you get into public, and then of course he's got a big, hey, everybody, and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, but it's effort,
Right. Do you think he hid the depression well from people, or do you think it was?
I think he did. I think most people don't really. I mean, I sort of know about this stuff, so that's why I'm sort of more in tune with it.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I was also dealing with my own shit. I'm like the master of dealing with feelings. I can. That's my forte, and so I think most people would rather not go there, and
Right.
so of course, if somebody doesn't make you go there, they're not, meaning, what I mean? You're not going to go there.
Right.
So if he's like all cheery, they're going to be great. This dude's cheery. That's great.
Right.
He's so much fun. Oh my God. Yeah, man. Right.
And they can't see sort of past that.
No, because why would they even want to bother trying? They don't want to, but I'm sure if they took a moment and thought about it, and if they would probably connect to him on that level as well, when people can be in that space. It takes people to be in that space themselves, acknowledge it, to recognize it in somebody else.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense. So I guess back to his comedy, because I asked you what it was like when he became a door guy. What was like the biggest improvement from like when you started dating him to later in his career and his Comedy Central special and all that?
It really happened at the Comedy Store, I think, and he really became like a real entertainer, where he just went up there and he just he did his act, and it was very strong, and he never came down. Like, like sometimes, like, we'll go up in the OR and he'll kind of be like, hey, be sitting there on the stool and be like, hey, man. And Freddie had those times too, right? He did. When he started actually going later on, after having been working here for several years and knowing his position here, he felt more relaxed to be able to just like sit on a stool and chat, which was also cool.
Right.
But he'd go up in the main room and he would kill it, because that's a room that you really can't be too subtle in. It's not a subtle room. It's it's like Vegas in there. So you've got to really be big. And he was able to fill the room, and he was determined to not let people down. And I think that's probably that was his thing. He didn't want to let people down. I think that's a big part of it. So he would just go after it.
Right. And then during the whole, I guess the sort of like, I guess I would describe the issues with Mencia.
Mm-hmm.
Were you there for any of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was so exciting. Well, I went to Vegas with him when he went to open for Carlos one time, and I think he was doing a week there, maybe two, but I think a week. It was a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there with him, and I remember sitting before the show. The room was still empty. We were sitting in the back, and Carlos walks up to Freddie and me. We're just sitting there, and he goes, hey, Freddie, don't do your dad stuff tonight. I'm going to do it.
So you're there when that happens.
I'm there. I'm sitting there listening to that. and I'm a comic, so I
Right.
was kind of like, are you shitting me right now? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Did he just say that? Did he just say that to you?
Like all his dad material.
He just said, don't do your, not all of his dad. I think there was a specific bit he was talking about that
Right.
Freddie knew. I mean, that's insanity. But that's what he said. And Freddie basically said, okay, whether it was with a nod or whatever it was, he agreed.
Right.
And I remember, like, I felt like I was in between being like, this is crazy and this is not acceptable. And what's wrong? Are you crazy? To kind of understanding his circumstance, because I think it was his first time opening for him or something like that. So it was a big deal.
Mm.
He didn't want to blow his opportunity. So he let Carlos manipulate him, and control him. And obviously, when we think about that, we think about, who else did that to him? His dad.
Right.
Let's put it all together right now. Why don't we? But anyway, so yeah. And so I was disgusted by him completely. And yet we had been there for Carlos's birthday. We went there met at Carlos's birthday party over at Cha 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 over on Virgil and Melrose or wherever the hell it was, or Hoover at the time. I remember. I mean, meaning he was still being congenial.
Right. It was like they were friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he put up with a lot. But again, see, it was familiar to him, this type of deceit.
So what did Freddie do that night?
He just did all of his other stuff. But it wasn't nearly as, strong as he would have wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And he was disappointed. He felt like shit afterwards. He felt like absolute shit afterwards.
But he didn't really do anything to stop it, did he?
Not at the time, no. And I don't think he did for a while. When people feel like they're not worth anything, and then you get something, you're just in gratefulness, not realizing that you're able to also be grateful and ask for more.
Right.
And Freddie I think he just didn't know that what he was worth. And so he was just in gratefulness and kind of keeping his mouth shut.
Yeah, that's a very depressive trait.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. So there's all that excitement. Good morning. how happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, not a fan of that situation at all.
Right. Have you ever confronted Mencia about it, or have you ever
No.
talked to him since?
No, because I didn't. I think I didn't care for him, and I didn't talk to him. I didn't go out of my way to speak to him, and then all this stuff went down with him and Joe Rogan, which totally turned me off. And at the same time, I'm not a Joe Rogan fan for many reasons, so I can care less about either of them. I didn't feel sorry for either douche, so it was kind of like you just but it was interesting to watch, and I was glad that Carlos was being outed.
Right.
Because I had personal experience with it, and he did hurt somebody I care about. So, obviously, but, I have, anyway, it's all complicated. It's all Comedy Store
Drama.
stuff. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There's loads of it. And I was here for a long time, so yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any Freddy stories in your mind that stick out to you?
Well, I'll tell you something about Freddy. As a person, I think he really always believed that. See, it's the total opposite of what I've just said, though, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily. He always believed that he could get more, and that he could, meaning like and I think that's probably why he shut his mouth with Carlos, is because he knew that he was going to override this. He was going to prove himself on top of it. You know what I mean? That this guy was not gonna, even if he took his material, he was not going to be kept down.
Right, he already had a chip on his shoulder, so what's one more chip?
Well, it's almost not even that so much. It's almost like Freddie knew, even though Carlos took his material and he, made him feel like an asshole, he knew that he was going to do better, that he was going to surpass possibly, or whatever it is. He had a lot to prove, and he knew he was going to do it. So in that sense, he was always like, he bought his house with cash. I remember he would buy, like crazy shit. Who does that, right?
Right.
But that's so old school, isn't it? You know what I mean? He doesn't want anybody up his ass, so he bought his house outright with cash, and he didn't want, that was his plan though. it wasn't an accident. It was his plan that he was going to, that there was not going to be anyone or anything that was going to get in his way of him, of getting the things that he wanted.
Right.
But on the good side of that, and I suppose in some people that is already a good thing, but he, okay, for example, we were total opposites, right? In the sense that he bought me for Christmas one year a CD player, like a traveling one,
Right.
for doing the road or whatever. And I remember getting really angry at him because I was like, I almost felt like he was fucking with me because I was totally broke. We all were at the time. I'm like, who the fuck? I'm like, now I have to buy CDs. You know what I mean? I couldn't believe, I really felt like he was fucking with me because he was like saying, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't afford the CDs.
Right.
So I got mad at him for the gift. You know what I mean? So, because I needed underwear. Do you know what I mean? I needed first things first. And who the fuck you? I mean, that's how fucked up I was. I'm so much better now. But anyway, point is that he always believed there was more.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whether it was career, or there was money, he knew it was there for him. But one thing he did say to me, which I always stuck with me, I remember saying to him, you deserve this, Freddie. You deserve, and he said, nobody deserves anything. It's not about deserve. And I always kind of battled with that. But now I have clarity about it, which is that we all deserve. We all deserve whatever it is that we desire. I mean, truly, we all deserve. If you're in the not deserving, that's a huge battle. I don't deserve is a huge battle to try to get things that you want. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he was willing to battle with that belief system and yet still try to overcome it with action. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was sort of interesting about him. I wish I had funnier stories. I mean, he just made me giggle, I guess. He was like, he liked to be silly. He definitely, when he was silly, he could be so much fun, so if you can get him in that space.
Right. You'd have to find a way to get in there, though, right?
Well, I would have to, it's half my fault too, though, right? So if I wasn't in, if I was in any kind of, whatever insecurity, fear, whatever it is, of course we're going to pull each other down. But we had a lot in common, I think, too, in that way. So that was sort of probably the problem, But yeah, I mean, I don't even want to tell you the story. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all good.
I mean, you can tell it.
No, it's just a silly story. It's not anything. Just one of the funniest times I think I ever had with him was we were hanging out. We were sharing a studio apartment. We just didn't even have an actual bedroom. It was just basically an area. Right. And it was only big enough to fit the bed. And so basically you have to climb over one another in order to just get out of the space to go to the bathroom. It was this tiny. And of course I stayed up all night long with my eyes wide open because I can't sleep with anybody. So it was really, really easy, peaceful time. It was supposed to be temporary because we were going to be finding a bigger place. But anyway, in the meantime, but one day we were in there and we were just hanging out and just being really silly. And I think I was naked. And normally I'm not comfortable naked, but for some reason, Freddie, I was able to just be silly. And we were just cracking up. It wasn't like there was no sexuality whatsoever, meaning pure comedy. Right. It was pure comedy, nudity, me being totally silly, free. And I realized I've never done that with anybody before or after. I've never felt that type of comfort with anybody because he was that kind of person, He
had a way of resting your soul.
Absolutely. He was just, he's somebody who could put you at ease, so, no judgment. That would be it. No judgment. So I'd say that's a pretty damn good trait.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you think because you feel like he always wanted more, was he able to enjoy things in the moment? Was he able to enjoy the stuff that he was doing at the moment, or was he always like, there's something better?
I think that he was excited like a little boy when it happened for him. And I think it was almost like he was excited because he could show his dad like a little kid would want to, not like an adult person, but like a little kid, which we get. And I think in that sense that he was. But then as soon as that was over, it would there'd be a big bam, and then he had to do better, do more, be more impressive, because I think he felt like he could never, as I said, never really please him and never really make him proud. And yet his dad was really proud of him. His dad was so proud of him, and he talked about him to other people all the time. But I think he might have not necessarily shared that face to face with Freddie himself.
Really?
It's possible. I think I think maybe towards the end he might have, you know. But again, this was something that was created a long time ago. This belief that Freddie had, as it all is for all of us. It's like from a very, very young age that we don't even remember.
Yeah.
And then you basically, unless you acknowledge it, you spend your life
Fighting
it. So I think that that's what he did. Yeah. So he's a special person, though. And it was interesting last night to hug Cruz and to feel his heart. Like, that was, like, insane. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know how
I can kind of understand.
So, like, Freddie I always felt his heart. Like, and he was a hugger. You know, he's a warm person. He was like your mother, like somebody's warm mother, and he can, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So he had that energy about him. He had a female, vulnerable energy about him, in a good way, you know?
Right.
And so, interestingly enough, I had not hugged him, obviously, in a long time. And you know, his daughter, when I hugged her, I felt his heart, and she hugged me the same way he hugged me. And I really felt that. And it was mind blowing. And, it just like, it altered me. And it took me back to some really tremendous, important times and feelings. And I don't mean just with him, but I mean with like everybody that was there and everybody of that circle that we had of friends, you know?
Yeah.
It's been a long time. You know, I've lived in like 3 other places since, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, you just don't realize how important people are in your life.
Until they're gone, really.
Well, that, and also even after they're gone, I never believed that I mattered, you know, to him but as time goes by, you realize that all these people in our lives have played such important roles. And, you know, we just think, oh yeah, that was just that time. Oh, that was just during those days. That was just, you know, but there is no just. It's all really relevant, and it's all important. And I don't think I realized how huge that is, our relationship was, and how much, you know what I mean, how much effect it has on you, you know. Because I mean, when at his funeral, it was impossible. It was impossible. I think I fainted, and I just, you know, just destroyed by the whole thing. And as I said, we weren't even together anymore. But, you know, when somebody, you know, when you care about somebody, it's a deep thing.
Yeah, it comes
you know?
back up again.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I can't even talk about it now, right? It's
Yeah,
like
that's
unbelievable.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, anything else you'd want? Like, a lot of comics like my age, no idea who he is. They have just this vague. They kind of know him as the guy Mencia stole from. That's kind of his. that's just kind of his.
That's funny.
Most people I talk to, they're like, I think I heard of him. He's like, oh, he's that guy that Mencia stole from. That's all. That's sort of the new sort of class knows about him. So I guess anything you'd want to tell the younger comics.
God. Well, trusting. Well, I think Freddie trusted himself, as I say. So, I mean, like, I don't think this is like. So, I mean, if I'm telling comics to, like, you know, what do you take away from somebody like that? It's trusting yourself and your own uniqueness. You know, that's it. And also, you have to start giving yourself credit for what you've done, and be okay with where you're at right now. Accept what is, and then you can ask for more. But you can't ask for more unless you accept what is. Otherwise, you're never even acknowledging what you've done. So then you're always just shitting on yourself, you know?
Right.
So you can't enjoy anything. And then it's never enough. It's never good enough. You're never good enough, and you're never happy, and it doesn't matter what you get. So it's worthless.
Oh.
So, truly.
Man, I felt like you were talking to me right there.
Okay.
That was good. Well, I mean, unless there's anything else you want to say?
I think I've spoken more than enough.
Well, I
But
thank you for being here, Cynthia.
yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks.